Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Lethal Weapon. Another great episode. In this episode, we dealt with crossing paths with a guy named Jonah who has schizophrenia, because basically the episode makes it seem like, oh, he's a bad guy. He sets computer to blow up. There was a dead guy found in wrapped up in a carpet or rug that came from his place, and it was in the dumpster. And just it's actually interesting too that it came about because a guy who snatched a purse ended up hiding out in that dumpster, found the body, dropped the purse, and just ran, just because he's like, no, I have anything to do with this, and ran. But basically, this guy, like, obviously he's a little out there, but basically he's a very brilliant dude. But it's like, his schizophrenia helps kind of bring a lot of things into focus for him, but it also kind of makes his brain go a little all over the place. In this particular case, like, he believes in a lot of conspiracy theories. This is kind of interesting because we end up finding out about Bailey, that she's super into conspiracy theories in this episode, and it almost seems like she's not the type. It's just because it seems like, I don't know, Bailey just seems like she's kind of like the super like rational type. It's like no, and that's just people looking too much into something. Just Bailey always seemed like she was that type, but it's like, no, turns out super into conspiracy theories. It kind of plays into the little the surface commercial tie-in, which I appreciate, between her and Scorsese, which they still play with that idea of, like, obviously him liking her, and she's not really necessarily like feeling the same way. But I just thought that was kind of interesting. Also, like, it's like, oh yeah, this person that you like watching, this blogger that you like, this conspiracy theorist, it's like, well, that's actually me. She's like, oh yeah, right. And it's like, oh. But I thought that was kind of neat. Nevertheless, it turns out Jonah's not 100% crazy. Basically, yes, things are kind of a little all over the place, but there's still some truth to even what he was saying. Because basically, it turns out that it's like these guys dressed as Elvis messing with traffic lights that can change them at will. And it's like, well, what's the point of that? Well, it seems like, I was like, okay, so I was like, why would you do that? Is it for some like attack? And I was like, no, it's for robbing a armored truck. So that was kind of interesting. What I do love about that whole situation is it kind of ties into the whole Molly and Riggs situation in the episode, which I'll kind of get to it later on. But I think what I appreciate about this episode too, it shows you even more about Molly. You kind of get to see Molly's personality. She's very stubborn. She handles things her own way. Like, Riss is like, get off. And she's like, no, I'm going to stay up here until you hear my side of the list. And she's like, get out of the way. I'll drive for you. And it's just like, whereas Riggs is a wild card, Molly definitely is a wild card herself. Not nearly as much, but you can definitely see that she pushes those boundaries of like being a wild card, much like him. So obviously I'll dive into that a little bit more, but Jonah was right. The reason why the guy in this episode that got killed, Larry, is because they thought Larry was Jonah because Jonah had found him out about what they were doing, but... So it's just kind of interesting, because it's also interesting because, like, you have like your local, our one of our protagonists being Riggs is kind of borderlining a little crazy himself, and so I think it was just kind of a nice fit where it's like Riggs is there to kind of help him and believe him with certain things. It's like, yeah, you're a little out there, but it takes crazy to understand crazy. Essentially, it's kind of what he kind of treated the whole situation as. So it's like, I appreciate the fact is that he didn't just completely dismiss everything Jonah said just because of his medical condition and stuff like that. But it's just kind of like because Riggs isn't 100%, has a 100% stable state of mind himself, I also appreciate the fact this Cahill played a bigger part in this episode too, kind of bridging that, because her and Riggs wanted the same thing as, like, for Jonah to go back to his wife and daughter who were waiting for him. And it's just like, I think when it comes to the family situations like that, we saw even last week's episode, like, when it comes to families, like, Riggs is very sympathetic, and, maybe, borderline empathetic just because of his own family situation, that it's just, he wants to... Well, I mean that both ways, just with his own situation with his family. It's like, these people have a good family. They should stay together. Nothing should kind of get in their way, with his dad. But obviously, like, there's a side with him and Miranda and the baby, losing both of them, like, that side of, like, let these people have each other while they still have each other. Because the thing is, like, Riggs is kind of like a pessimist. And I think that's something I can kind of, like, click with his character a lot, because I'm kind of like, I kind of see the worst in everything just for my own particular reasons. And he does the same, which kind of ties into this episode. The fact is, going back to it, because I was going to, was the fact is that Molly kissed him. Did not see that coming. I was like, oh, there's this little flirtation between them. Oh, will they not date? Like it's there, but neither one's really active. The fact she kissed him like that completely took me by surprise. Also, then we found out about what her job is. It seems like she runs a restaurant and she's a chef. Maybe they brought that up before when she came up, like in the story, but I don't remember that. I thought that was kind of interesting. It looks like a pretty fancy restaurant she works at too. Not unless she's like a freelance chef where she just goes where she's needed, but that might. Maybe that's where she works at now. I don't know. That's just kind of interesting. Her job has never really come up before. Or just because maybe I'm just an idiot not remembering. But nevertheless, she kissed him and Riggs was shocked and I was like, whoa. I was like, this is super awkward. I was like, oh, were you just doing that just to shut him up? And it's just like, oh no, actually, it's like, no, you have been feeling. It's just, I wasn't expecting it. So someone's like, oh, I thought a couple more episodes will pass, get a little more time between. There's something weird and awkward. But it's like, no, we went straight into it this episode. They had a date and everything, which Riggs the entire time is being against it. Kind of going back to the whole Riggs is kind of crazy is the fact is he's like, yo, like you Jonah, rather than pointing that gun at yourself, point it at me. You be doing me a favor. I got this whole conflicted feeling about going on this date with my friend. So just shoot me and I'll have an excuse. Go ahead, shoot me before I change my mind. And then Roger stops him in time and it's just like, yeah. And then you have Riggs being like, thanks a lot, Roger. Now I have to go on a date. And it's like, wait, because that's the thing about Riggs. He's kind of an enigma because it's like, wait, were you not just saying that just to give Roger time to strike, or did you really want him to shoot you just so you get out of his date? It's like you can kind of say it both ways. It's like you really don't want to go on this date, and even Cahill is like it's kind of a good idea, but for him, you understand where Riggs is coming from. It never really dives into it too much on one end. Obviously, one side of it is like it's like he says himself. It's like she's like one of his best friends since he was growing up. Molly's one of the few things from his childhood that's still good. He just doesn't want to screw it up because everything he touches, he explodes. Which Roger was like, no, don't be ridiculous. Like the computer's about to explode. Oh, see, it didn't explode. Not everything you touch. Oh, wow, the computer exploded. So it's like completely shutting Roger up. Like, yeah, maybe going on a date isn't right for you. But it's understandable because Riggs feels like everything he touches, he ruins, On some things, he ruins on purpose just because of the whole aspect of because he tries to keep people at a distance because, it's weird and awkward for him to be close to people. So he kind of just, tries to push them off and away from him. And it's just, because he doesn't get, the last person he got close to was Miranda. And it's just which side note too, we don't really learn too much about his life in Texas in the sense of who he worked with when he was with the, well, because I don't think any stuff from his military days has come up. Wasn't he a ranger or something like that? His military days hasn't come back up. Considering the whole situation. And also being a cop, his cop days, basically, before everything happened in the series. All that stuff we still have never, touched on. It's because Rogers never actually met a lot of people who knew Riggs in the past of oh yeah, this is who he was, what kind of cop he was before everything kind of went tits up, so. But nevertheless, I'm kind of getting super sidetracked and getting back to what I was talking about earlier. Obviously being weird and awkward around everyone. And I think another element to the whole him and Molly situation is that's also his best friend's lady. And it's for him, I'm sure he feels he's stabbing his best friend in the back, even though Jake's got his own situation that he's going into now. He still probably feels, because I think even Jake to a certain extent has been soured, not just because of the criminal life he leads now, kind of always getting into trouble, but it's also because, they always got in trouble together, but it's what happened to Riggs' dad is what really kind of broke the camel's back in this particular situation, and it kind of led Jake down the path, the constant getting in and out of trouble, and, I think also the fact is that Riggs feels like he owes him still. That's just all that accumulates, and it just kind of, I think, leaves him a little sour because he doesn't want to ruin the one good thing he has left connected to his past, so. But you pretty much have everyone screaming, hey, give it a chance. Even Cahill, which I love that when Molly showed up, kind of showing you who Molly is. She's like, oh, you didn't come to our date. I was like, oh, I thought you were dead or something. But no, here you are, perfectly fine. There's all these, you could literally contact me, but you didn't. She's like, so give me $12 for parking. And he's like, oh, well, this is Cahill. She's my therapist. Oh, yeah, poor you. It's just I love that because she's kind of Molly's very kind of like, no matter what your situation is, Riggs, like, kind of gives no fucks. But in actuality, it's because she really cares. It's like, she's scared too is something that she admits, because she even adds parts to her list of like, you say we don't belong together, we shouldn't date for these reasons. Like, I got more reasons, but it's also because you're scared and I'm scared. And it's okay to be scared, because you know what that means? That means we're afraid that there is something here that we're afraid of. Like, and the fact is that you're afraid of losing something means that it is something important in the first place. So why not try and take a leap, essentially, you know? So that was kind of neat. Also, really quickly I love that whole situation where it's like, also Molly kind of got to see firsthand what kind of cowboy act Riggs kind of pulls. And I love the fact is that Roger ended up stopping the armored truck the way he did, which I'll kind of get into that whole situation with his side of the story soon enough. But I really think it's so cute that they are, like I said, did not expect them to get together so soon. Also love the fact is that them getting drunk and making milkshakes at Roger's house. It would have been adorable if it was both Trish and Roger that called them, but it was just Roger, and he's like, it's like, I expect this of Riggs, but you, he's like, And it's just so, and they're just so drunk and just laughing it up and then eventually making out and stuff like that. And you have Roger being like, don't have sex in my kitchen. I've got a black light, which is like weird that you would admit that in that particular situation. But I guess it's like, yeah, if you try anything, I'll know for sure if you had sex in my kitchen or not. And I love that, dude. It's one of those situations like you worry about it, but at the same time you're happy. You want Riggs to happy, and it's like Riggs needs a win in this particular case, and it's just like, especially since Palmer and everything, it's like you want him and Palmer together, but it's like him and Molly together. But then immediately your brain kind of goes like, you're worried about everything else, kind of going along those ways of like, oh man, like, I hope things don't end up bad. Like you're just halfway expecting it at this point, kind of like things aren't going to work out, are they? You're hoping and praying on everything that they do, but ultimately we'll just kind of have to wait and see about that whole thing. So, I won't lie to you, there was always a part of my brain that was kind of like, oh, maybe Riggs and Cahill at one point in time, but I was like, nah, that never happened, because that's like a patient and doctor situation, and it's like that's unethical, and Cahill's not the type to kind of cross the lines like that. You know, so, but I don't know, it'd be interesting, but I don't think neither one of them look at each other like that. So it is more kind of like a doctor-patient situation, but I think it's, you know, I don't know if they'd actually admit it, but I think they are friends like that, you know, probably amongst, I mean, literally of anyone. He talks to Cahill more than anyone. I mean, yes, it kind of goes with the whole therapist thing, but like, even then, like, we see how Riggs is. He's very reluctant to talk to anyone about anything anyway. And so I think Cahill is a lot easier to talk to than most people, you know? So, and I'm curious to see if Molly will kind of represent that for him too, and just like bring a little more life back to his life. Not having to just always drink his sorrows away, and maybe he'll have someone that he can kind of finally like 100% confide in and everything too. So there's that side of thing. But obviously I really love the Roger story in this. Like obviously like they're trying to get Harper into this super elite preschool named Kellogg, and it's like it's super good and super elite, but you're like, you can't have any pop culture or TV, which is super weird. But I guess it's like, you know, hey, like this is super elite, so it's like, hey, you need to be so focused on this that your brain is occupied with learning and nothing else, no distractions type of thing. And you know, they put their whole situations up, like they set up a meeting at the house, and I love it. And it's just Roger's putting up a front and everything, trying to be like, oh yeah, she says, oh yeah, Harper said this in English, and now we're working on Mandarin. And you have Trish like squeezing his fingers, like cracking it in, because he's going overboard. Like she said, don't do that. But like always, Roger's going to always do the extreme, because Roger is just extreme by nature. Which I guess it so fits him, because they're extremes in their own right. Roger's extreme in his own way, just like Riggs is extreme in his own way. And I don't think Roger ever really notices that about himself. Nevertheless, but what I love the fact of the matter is at the end of the episode, when he was stopping the armor truck, as well, I was kind of alluding to earlier, and I'm like, I was like, oh, isn't that the doctor? Isn't that the lady from the Kellogg? I was like, no, I'm just, because it seemed like there was one lady in particular who's with her daughter or something that it was focusing on. I was like, oh, maybe that's just my imagination. And then even Roger was like, wait, Dr. Weir? And it's like, I was like, that's so funny, because she was literally coming on movie theater. And I love that he literally blackmails her later on. I'm like, that's so funny and yet messed up that you're doing that, blackmailing her just so your daughter can get into like the best of best schools. So I'm very interested to see where that goes from now on. Like, will we kind of get this peek more into that? And what does that mean going forward? The fact that he blackmailed his child into going. I mean, does that mean they still have to give up the whole TV thing? Or is it just this blackmail is strong enough to be like, hey, I don't have to worry about it. She'll keep our secret as long as we keep hers. Which I'm also curious, did he get... Is Trish in on it now too? Does she know about that whole business about blackmailing, or is that something Roger's keeping close to the vest? It's like, I will wait till Harper's 18 years old and well past this situation that we don't even have to worry about anymore, that it can't be used against her in some shape or form, or used against me, because of statute of limitation. Which, does blackmailing have a statute of limitation? I don't think about that. I don't know. I don't think that's ever come up in any, like, all the crime drama, police procedural type of shows I've ever seen over the years. I don't think that's ever come up before. Maybe it hasn't, I'm just blinking. I don't know. Just randomly came into my mind during all this tangent talk. But, nevertheless, overall, a great episode. Very interested to see this whole Molly and Riggs situation continue going forward. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. To the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.